Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of the Yobagoya Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Dom O'Brien, and joining me, as usual, is the Isaiah Crowell to my Deshaun Kaiser, Jamie.
Good to be back once again in your ears. It's good to be heard. It's good to hear you, Dom.
We love it.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
I'm so
week
ready. I'm
5
going to get
to
the
finish?
hate-blocking glasses on in preparation. So you may hear some noise in the background. That's me donning the glasses because my opinions will
ready.
damage your eyes. They're going to be that hot.
Do you say they're going to damage my eyes?
I mean, the heat is going to be like radiating out of your device. So much so that it will cause permanent eye damage. Like looking at the sun, you know?
I'm so ready for this. Ever since the news dropped, ever since the heat landed, I was ready for it.
Incredible stuff.
Well, that's pre-show tease.
Yeah,
I
we
guess.
always save the best till last.
Before we go, before we deep dive, let's just quickly recap week 5. Some big games, some interesting results for sure. I'll start us off relatively easy. Adam versus Sam, the league champ, taking on up and coming Sam, I would say. An interesting result, 130.5 for Sam, 94.3 for Adam. I think, if I remember rightly, I think I said Adam might win this, but Sam was more likely to win this, and I think I predicted Adam to win it, so shows what I know. And I think this kind of came down to defensive play, actually, if I'm looking at the box score very quickly. Adam kind of dumpstered by the Broncos with a -2, and the bottom end of his roster not cashing in enough points. And Saquon Barkley, need I say more? I mean, you watch the Giants game with laser precision,
Of course,
I'm sure.
as I always do. I mean, Saquon Barkley's really fun to watch. I would like to be considered a fan. Eli Manning, though, really bad.
Oh, come on, he's elite. Do you not read NFL.com?
I mean, I think the top priority for the Giants right now should be bringing back McAdoo on a one-day contract to permanently bench him.
I don't know if I could live with seeing that haircut ever again on an NFL sideline.
Eli Manning actually, he's having a bit of like an old Yeller moment, if you catch that reference.
Is he ready to be taken around the back and shot?
I think he might be.
It's weird how the Manning family, while very good and very consistent quarterback play, towards the end of their careers, take a dive off a cliff so fast, you're not even sure they were ever any very good.
Do we think that they just stick around too long? Probably go on 1 or 2 years longer than they should.
I think the biggest, not mistake, I think the greatest regret Eli Manning's ever going to have is not pushing to get traded to Jacksonville sooner.
Maybe.
Because if he had that defense and he was able to just get a lead and then not worry about it, could the Jacksonville Jaguars be a Super Bowl contender? Probably. Is Blake Bortles the answer at quarterback?
The great
Absolutely
equaliser.
not.
Right, let's attack the next game because we've got so much to talk about. So you came up against Tom, the Clash of the Titans, 2 undefeated teams, and this was the week that Alvin Kamara was given a rest by the Saints, and you came out winning 117-93, and really, I mean, yes, there was a bit of doubt because we didn't know that Kamara would be seeing a reduced workload. But I think, was it ever really in doubt? I don't know. How did you feel? You had 2 guys put up 0 and you still won by, over 20 points.
really worried when Brandon Cooks took that hit. Not because, oh my god, you're supposed to score me fantasy points. That hit was awful. Real awful. And you hate to see that kind of play happen. Particularly when it's a player that you enjoy watching. I've enjoyed watching Brandon Cooks from his days on the Saints. So, to see him have to leave a game like that, really unfortunate. And the Rams defense getting into a shootout, not unexpected, but I was sweating it a little bit, but everyone else did their jobs. David Johnson, 2 touchdowns, hitting that ceiling like I want him to. Travis Kelce, business as usual. Juju didn't really have much to say in that game. He only had 3 catches, but he had a touchdown, 11 points. Thank you very much. AJ Green, 14 points. All my guys performed on the level I expect them to, and it just got me the win. And I think Tom just got unlucky this week. Ajayi going out onto IR, pull one out for the homie.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Tom's guys couldn't play like that the week I went up against him. Could they?
Of course. Well, you are going to have to maintain the most points.
Of course,
against
yeah. That record does still stand
this year.
for those of you who are interested. Great stuff.
Interestingly enough, though, Tom is still the highest scoring team in the league. So it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up with the potential. It's kind of like I said, with Mark Ingram coming back into the fold, I think the Saints are taking an approach where, well, we don't need to use Alvin Kamara as much. We'll save him for the playoffs.
I think you could be onto something there.
Absolutely. Next game I'm going to talk about, it's going to be yourself, the Redeem team, coming up against Paul Carpenter and the For Netflix boys. Very interesting game. I think this is the closest game, or by it's going to be 0.2 of a point, because Ryan and Dan actually had quite a very close game as well. But this was one where so close, but not so close for yourself. Mark Ingram put on a clinic, but
game was out of sight, wasn't it?
Some of these players. I mean, I've not really looked at your points total until just this minute, so great planning on my part. But Doug Baldwin, yikes! You can't do that to your man Dom. Look at that. I'm just gonna have to tease the bench here. Yeah, insatiable regret here on your side once again, where a bench player would have won you the game.
I mean, Paul's bench though. Paul's bench looked tasty.
Paul's bench with Isaiah Crowell.
What a day!
30 points. Have yourself a day, Jets fans. Jesus. But I mean, what's there to say really? I think with the trades you've made, you should start to see higher point totals. But I just think you've just got unlucky. You've faced up against teams that have had their best days against you almost every week.
That really makes me feel better. Thank you.
Well, I don't know what else to say. How else can you describe the kind of fortune that you're going up against? You've still won 2 games, so a win's a win, my friend. When you get it,
we'll certainly take them. Take what we can get at this point. Jeez. Right, I will have a look at Chris against Fraser. Fraser taking this one. He's on a 2-game win streak. We mentioned before we came on the air, Chris is actually, his team is looking really good. Apart from the Falcons defense, which is actually managing to lose him games single-handedly. This week they had -2. The week before they had 1. The week before that they had -8. When you're losing games by roughly 10 points, your defense putting up a negative score, probably not the best look. Mind you though, Fraser did have Rashad Penny, who didn't see the field once in the entire game, so hey, the margin of victory could have been bigger.
Certainly have to consider maybe just putting Sammy Watkins in the slot and just keeping Christian McCaffrey and LeGarrette Blount as your running backs on that situation, perhaps.
Okay, thank you.
Still
got some mini Frankfurt as well.
Certainly also look at maybe playing Kenyon Drake, for Chris over Belial Powell. I'm not too sure with the way the Jets' offense is panning out that Belial Powell's going to see more production than Isaiah Crowell at this moment, because he just seems to be the running back they prefer having on the field.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was a fun day for the Jets. Can we do the Donald joke?
Please
Donald
do the
Schwarzenegger.
Donald joke.
Robbie, I can't do the accent, I'm afraid. Get to the end zone now. Oh, there we go. That wasn't a bad effort.
Put that flag down.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
Okay, finally for me, Ryan versus Dan. Another very close game, and you gotta wonder how lucky Dan keeps getting with some of these point totals. 60 points, 62 points, should I say, from two players, Todd Gurley and James Conner, single-handedly winning him this game, because the rest of his team, on some areas, putting up some
Pooped in the big boy
eggs.
pants.
Amari Cooper, the focal point of the Raiders' offense, putting up a 1.5. And Matt Prater, unusually putting up a low point total. He's usually good for 9 to 10 points, putting up 6. The Vikings' defense very good, and for Ryan, I just think he got unlucky. You know, is there places where he could have had improvement? Certainly. Robbie Anderson, a sad seat on the bench this week, but a very difficult player to have confidence in playing, particularly over someone like Theo Riddick, who you would think perhaps would score more points than Robbie Anderson. So, an unfortunate result for Ryan, who could have quite easily stolen this game and sent Dan his first loss.
So my final game, Mark again looking for his first win. I forget it's Reese. Wasn't too close in the end. Mark did have some nice scores once again. Sony Michel, this was really his breakout week. Thielen is really, 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 really good. Aside from that, not too great for Mark. Meanwhile, Reese just keeps chugging on. 4-1 now. Drew Brees, 27 points. Chester Rogers, 10 points. I mean, just some smart plays at wide receiver in particular. No one that really blew your mind, but just good, solid pickups. 8 points from Ryan Grant, 9 from Keelan Cole. Chester Rogers with 10. Zach Ertz with a nice 22 from your tight end. And TJ Eldon, who was a waiver wire pickup, 22 points. And it looks like he's going to see continued work in that position, as Fournette is rumoured to now be out till week 10.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Fournette, because you want to see him on the field, because he's the kind of talent that you want to see on the field, because when he runs the ball, it's kind of like watching 80s football again. A bit of punch him in the mouth football.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that style does lend itself towards injuries. Seeking out contact as Fournette does. And hamstring wounds are always difficult to come back from. We often see in the NFL guys saying, yes, I'm ready to come back from my hamstring injury, and lo and behold, they touch the field and they're injured again, which is what happened to Fournette.
Yeah. Perhaps maybe they should have waited another week before they sent him back on, but what do we know? We're armchair enthusiasts.
Leonard, if you somehow end up listening to this, please rest up. Thank you.
Please rest up. Yes. Get that ice pack on.
Ice up, son. Woo.
Woo. Quick sort of opinion poll. Just this season, your top 3 receivers this season.
Wow, that's really putting me under pressure. As in, what do you mean top 3? Let's quantify this. Is this like if I'm going into next season and I want to build a team?
No. Just performance this season. Top 3 wide receivers. Do you want me to go first to help you along?
No, I'll go. I'll go. It's really tough, isn't it? Top 3 is such a hideous number.
I have 3, but it's kind of controversial.
3 is not a fun number. I'm gonna go DeAndre Hopkins number 1. Thielen number. How many touchdowns has Thielen got? We'll go for Thielen 2 and Michael Thomas 3.
Okay, I have similar, but it's actually number 3 that I'm different. I differ with you slightly, and it's mainly, it's not touchdown based, it's performance based. I actually sneak the cheetah in at number 3.
I respect it.
Yeah, but that's simply because, you know, last season it was kind of like, oh, he just runs a fade and beats everyone because he's fast.
There was he had to play there was a trick play, and it was a rushing attempt in the end, and he picked it up and he got closed in by 2 defenders, and he somehow found another gear, and it didn't look real. And actually, I rewound the broadcast, and I was like, what on earth have I just watched? It was absolutely crazy. It was like he just hit the sprint button all of a sudden, even though he already looked really fast.
Yeah. For those of you who are a bit lost, we're talking about Tyreek Hill of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Kick returner, according to Jalen Ramsey.
I mean, he does return.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose
really
it's true, isn't it? Yes.
He is right, but he also plays on offense.
It's rather reductive.
Really well. It's difficult to call him just a wide receiver because he does things no human should do.
And off the football field, but hey, that's a story for another day.
Now, I have a question for you. Do you want to do the previews now?
Let's do the previews now.
And then the previews. Okay. So, week 6 is going to be a doozy. I'm very much excited. I think the first game I'll start with yourself, the Redeemed team, going up against Mark. Both teams here really looking for a win. And on the face of it, ESPN seems to project this as a fairly close game. But I think in the end, you're going to take the win here. And it's just by the virtue of you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Melvin Gordon, Jordan Howard's off bye week, the Bears defense is back. I think the Bears defense is going to look even better. Khalil Mack has been superb. And I think against Miami, what are they actually going to achieve other than making you potentially score 15 points on defense? Maybe. And Odell Beckham Jr. going into Philadelphia, the defense that was number 1 last season looks like it's spent the entire off season playing defense against a clock drill Patriots team. Things to look up for Mark. Sony Michel probably going to see a lot more production now. Adam Thielen is just going to do what Adam Thielen does. Jared Goff to bounce back, score a few more points for him. And I think the Jaguars defense is going to have a great game against Dallas.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Mind you, Jerry Jones said that Dallas offense was like the Rams offense. So I don't know what year Ramsey's talking about. Maybe a Jeff Fisher team, but yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah. Maybe those 2008 Rams
with Sammy Sleeves at quarterback. Great stuff.
Yeah, and but it's all about the great running back and question marks across the board.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right, I will have a look at the marquee matchup of the week. Again, 2 undefeated teams, and by the end of the week, there shall only be one. Dan, up against yourself. What a matchup. Dan has the real big hitters, Cam Newton, Todd Gurley, James Conner, maybe Gronk. He has bodies at wide receiver. Some of them are warm. I just really like your matchup here. It's just great. Deshaun Watson, okay, yeah, Buffalo, anything can happen, but David Johnson, well, Minnesota's defense doesn't look great. He's probably not going to match Todd Gurley, but, you know, between him and James White, probably one of them's going to outscore Chris Thompson. I mean, the wide receivers, to compare Amari Cooper with AJ Green is an affront to all that is good about American football. I mean, is Brandon Cooks going to play? That's the only worry you have, in my opinion.
Potentially. I mean, the reports coming out of Rams' mouths are that him and Cooper Kupp look good to go and are progressing through the concussion protocol as planned. So, I hope so. But, you know, how do players kind of play post-concussion protocol? Sometimes they're fine. Sometimes it takes a couple of snaps, a couple of series, a couple of games to get right.
Yeah, tough stuff.
Moving. Oh, do you have a prediction?
Yes, I predict that you're going to win.
Okay, fantastic. I abstain.
Oh, that's brave of you.
For obvious reasons. Coming up next, we've got Fraser and Paul, 2 and 3 teams fighting for their way into the playoffs, or at least to stay alive. The projections here are not in Fraser's favour, but he does have 2 players that he needs to shift onto the bench because they're going in bye weeks, LeGarrette Blount and Benjamin Watson, so I imagine when he fills those slots the game may be a little bit closer. I think on the face of it, Paul's probably going to win this because he's got all of his big stars playing. Cooper Kupp should be back, hopefully. Keenan Allen, Isaiah Crowell being played, so hopefully that shows some promise. Hopefully he can do back-to-back performances.
Yeah.
I would like to see how the Panthers do post bye week. Sort of having the next second game in since the bye week.
Wonder if they're going to be rejuvenated by the return of Greg Olsen.
Yes. Another storyline to keep an eye on. Both of these teams have a lot of questionables. In fact, T.Y. Hilton's already been confirmed that he's not playing. Leonard Fournette out, obviously, and Evan Ingram also out. So, although Paul's already got those covered up, Aaron Rodgers probably going to be questionable all season. I don't believe it until I actually see that knee implode on itself and he gets.
I'd rather not see that, honestly, but
yeah, I don't want to see that again. Another year without Aaron Rodgers on the football field is going to be a sad year. So more Aaron Rodgers, please. Yeah, as I said, I think Paul's going to win this one, just on the virtue of he's going to have more of his marquee players. I
think that's a pretty fair assessment. I will take a look at So there's some good options. Let's go for Reese up against Sam. Reese 4-1, Sam 2-3. Lot to play for. Sam had some really nice performances last week. As I've already mentioned, Saquon Barkley is a joy to watch. But Michael Thomas on the bye, which is not too helpful. But the return of Marlon Mack, so maybe Sam will finally be able to bench Derrick Henry, who's looked really poor. Yeah, that's putting it nicely. Maybe a return to the lineup for Deshaun Jackson in replace of Michael Thomas. Good stuff. But on Reese's side, well, don't want to spoil our discussion later too much, but it seemed like the rich got richer to me.
Well, so I think I'll save my opinion piece for our discussion later. Finally, for myself, we're going to take a look at Tom versus Adam. This is a once undefeated team coming in after their first loss.
Just rubbing that in, are you?
And are
okay.
No,
not you wouldn't do that.
Right, just spinning the narrative. Come on, man. And last year's champion, starting to hit some troubles. A 3-2, still second in his division, but an interesting lineup. It's going to be a very close game. I think we've got some big names and big scores that are going to come out of this game. I lean towards Tom winning this on the virtue of I predict some big performances out of Kirk Cousins, Joe Mixon, and Devontae Adams for the second week in the row. And for Adam, Phillip Rivers is gonna probably have a nice game. I mean, the Cleveland defense is a real thing. It's not that sieve of a ghost that once was. And I think Tyreek Hill's going to have a game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That man is...
I do like the pickup of Wendell Smallwood, as we all know. A bit of a bidding war for Wendell Smallwood. Hopefully that produces points from Adam, but I think this will be a 5-point victory for Tom in the sort of, maybe 100 and 120 point range.
Yeah, okay, I respect it.
I think Tom's done enough to cover up for the lack of Alvin Kamara this week.
That's I think that's a fair assessment. I like your prediction. So that leaves me with the final game. And if I make sure I get this right here, is it Chris versus Ryan? Okay, so 1-4 versus 0-5. Tough times all round, I think. Not ideal. But we know Chris's Falcons dominated team are going up against Tampa Bay, and that is a lovely matchup. Expect a lot of points from both sides there. And I think if I was looking at my roster, I would be trying to start as many players involved in that game as possible. So Chris has Matt Ryan, the Falcons defense, which we probably already assessed are not doing him any favours. Matt Bryant and Mohamed Sanu. Meanwhile, Ryan has, it looks like just Cameron Brate, who is certainly, I expect, someone to put up good numbers from the tight end position. But I think I'm going to lean with Chris on this one. Although I really do think the Falcons defense is going to potentially hinder him. Just think he's just got enough, really. Ryan's done some nice moves in the last couple of weeks, or probably the last couple of days. But I still think Chris is going to come out on top in this one.
Yeah, a couple of trades for Ryan to make or improve his roster. Giving up Joe Mixon, getting his hands on Dion Lewis and Will Fuller. Could see point swings in his direction that leads to some victories for him. I think the weak link for Chris here is if the Falcons' defense puts up something in the negative point range, could lose him this game. Otherwise, I think he'll win if they manage to keep it above the negative point range.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, so that's the preview done, and now the main event, the special feature of the week. It's what we're all here for. Everyone's been hyped. Everyone's gathering around the campfire, ready for Dom to spit petrol across it.
Jesus, that's a horrific metaphor.
Shall we? Well, you did say you were going to blind me with heat from my own electronic appliance.
True.
So, I mean, all I'm doing is setting it up in a dark wood in the middle of nowhere as we all cower in fear of your godly, flame-breathing hot takes.
Halloween is coming, children.
I mean, to set this up on a personal level, I was walking home from work, engaged with Dom talking about the recent free agent acquisition drop, the bidding for Wendell Smallwood, some of the other pickups, dropping $15 on Greg Olsen because I had a mini panic thinking that other people were going to start picking him up.
Yeah, we were having a nice chat, weren't we?
And it was a homely fantasy football chat which we have leading up to the podcast, and I get an email through and I can't instantly are like, are you seeing this? And his first response was, I'm not too sure what to say, which confused me because I thought, no, it's a fantasy football trade, not a real life trade. And he's like, yeah, I know, I cannot believe
yeah, I think
my
my
eyes.
words were, I'm confused.
And I mean, initially we thought it was a mistake. We were waiting for Adam or for Reese to come forward and be like, actually, this wasn't supposed to happen. We've made a mistake here. And then we were like, okay, it's been 15 minutes. Maybe this wasn't a mistake. And, Reese did come into the chat and say, hey guys, what do you think? And I mean, I know I was very coy. I wanted to see what he's picked up over the last couple of weeks on the podcast, because we know he's an avid listener. He wants to get involved. He's getting amongst it. And I mean, his assessments were pretty much on point for what he thought he was getting out of the deal. But I know for a fact that you weren't too happy with the whole circumstances. So I'm gonna leave you the floor. So please take us through your mind, Dom, on the trade.
I mean, I was just baffled. I'm incredibly surprised, I will say. I appreciate that Taylor Gabriel had a big week, but I really, really don't see how the values match up. Of course, the beauty of fantasy football is we will soon see probably someone is going to win this trade and someone is going to lose it. I'm looking at Taylor Gabriel in his last game, which was against, and let's just make sure we're getting this right, was against the Buccaneers? Yes, it was against the Buccaneers. And this was the game where Trubisky threw for 6 touchdowns. And the Bears beat the Buccaneers 48-10. Now, I do not believe that this game is representative of much at all, really. Not only do I not think Trubisky will probably play like this again this season, if I was feeling particularly nasty, I would say probably not again in his career. And unfortunately for our man Taylor Gabriel, if Trubisky is not doing the business, then not much. He's not going to score many points. And he's going to have a tough time with things. I think the best season of Taylor Gabriel's career came when he was still with the Browns. And I did make a note of this because I thought I would have to do this segment justice and I would have to do some research. So Gabriel's best season, he put up 621 yards over a 16-game season. Julio Jones has close to 600 already this season so far. I appreciate yards aren't everything, and Julio Jones isn't exactly a touchdown monster, but I wouldn't say Taylor Gabriel is either. Yes, he scored 2 against the Bucks in the aforementioned games, but they're his only 2 of the season so far. And I'm really not seeing it, Jamie. I'm absolutely baffled. Gabriel, hold on, I got one more big stat for you. Gabriel has 193 yards this season, right, receiving yards. Julio Jones week 4 had 173, and in week 1 he had 169. Yes, I know Julio Jones doesn't put those numbers up every single week, but the guy is currently ranked as the 15th best wide receiver in fantasy football by our scoring. There are going to be weeks where you feel he lets you down, but I would certainly feel like he made up for it when it seems like every other week he's putting up a high-end wide receiver 1 number. I would say a matchup winning number. And the guy's never going to drop a goose egg, that's for sure. Not like Taylor Gabriel putting up, 5 receptions for 25 yards or something similar, which has happened this season. Week 1, week 2, 30 yards. Week 3, 34 yards. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, so obviously we're not suggesting that Taylor Gabriel is ever going to be anywhere near the skill level of Julio Jones. This man is one of the best wide receivers in the league. From a fantasy perspective, Julio Jones puts up points like a wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1. By that, I mean his standard of points will average around 11.5. Fair to say, 11.5, with a high ceiling of 30 points. So, while he may not score high points consistently, what he does do is put up a lot of yards, and that's what his role in that offense is to put up big yards on broken plays or leveraged plays where the defense commits to the other side of the field and they get him sprung on a man coverage. What it leads to is that when they get to the red zone, he's double covered, so players like Hooper, Ridley, now that they've got him at rookie, and the other wide receivers, the running backs, they're the ones who score the touchdowns. But Julio Jones puts up monster games. When it comes to goose eggs, in my mind, there was a season where he didn't catch much. I can't remember. I think it was last year. He put up a very poor effort, which was, here it is. Week 13 last year against Minnesota, he had 2 receptions for 24 yards.
We are talking. Minnesota's defense last year was ridiculous, though.
Was ridiculous, but as a talking point, that's one. Now, last season, I'm just gonna run you through his totals. So 4 receptions, 66 yards, 5 108, 7 91, 330. So that's a sort of basement score. 672, 1 touchdown. 374, 6 118, 657, 571, 12 253, 2 touchdowns. 224, 598, 354, 7149, 580. So 3 touchdowns last year. So that's not where you're going to get your points. That's not why you have him on your team. But his ceiling game, 12 catches, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's about a 45 point game in our PPR league.
It's mind-blowing.
And Taylor Gabriel doesn't even sniff at that. His ceiling right now is, 8 for 117 and 2 touchdowns. And that's a ceiling game. Like, where is the consistency from Taylor Gabriel? Because we haven't seen it. He's played on bad teams, Cleveland Browns, and the Bears up to this point have not been a good
Atlanta
team
as well.
Yeah, he must have been. But see, the problem with a player like Taylor Gabriel is he team hops and can't stick with teams because he's talented, but he just doesn't get it. Cleveland are famous for wasting talented players, sending them elsewhere, and suddenly they're great. But Taylor Gabriel hasn't shown us that he's got it yet. He's a great talent, and I like his upside. But when you talk about trade deals, blur.
Yeah.
Taylor Gabriel wasn't even drafted, I don't think. Or if he was, it was a late round selection. Julio Jones is a first round pick. He's the kind of player who, if we were talking trades, I would offer AJ Green and expect the other person to come back and say, go forth and multiply with yourself. That's not happening.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm lost, but at the same time I'm not burying anyone's logic. Adam may be looking at the point totals he's had from Julio Jones, and he's like, I want to move away from him. And the concerns are valid. Last year, Atlanta's offense was pretty good. Year before was spectacular, and this year it's
just the red zone, isn't it?
With
really?
the defense with the defense falling apart at the seams, with all the great players going down, the offense is having to carry all of the weight, and it's not built to do it. I understand, but it's the same argument I had with David Johnson last week. The Arizona offense has been putrid, but he's the best player on that offense, and eventually someone in that building is going to wake up from that coma they're all in and go, hey, what if we get David Johnson the football? And then he starts scoring points. You know, he scored 20 points for me last week, won me the game, in essence. And I predict going forward, as Josh Rosen gets comfortable in this offense, he's going to see better looks because they're going to actually have to defend against Josh Rosen's arm. It all opens up. We're in week 5 of the season. You don't quit on a first round pick until, once we're like maybe 9 games in.
Yeah.
Would be the fair assessment. And I mean, the trade deadline is November the 21st. Or 24th? 21st November. We've got a whole nother month to make trades. We've got a whole nother month to evaluate our players and make our teams as best as we want them to, or as best as we can, before we get to the playoffs or late season. So, for me, I was confused and slightly concerned we'd had another accidental dropping of Marshawn Lynch scenario on our hands. But, I mean, we could sit here and spout our opinions all day long and then Adam prove us wrong. And Taylor Gabriel goes and scores more points than Julio Jones. But on the face of it, from what we know and what we have seen this season, it's not going to happen. And just to finalise the point, and it kind of punctuates to what you were saying. So, Mitch Trubisky had that fantastic game, 6 touchdowns. I can't quote the yards he had, but players who've had similar performances to that.
Elite.
Nick Foles, week 1 of 2016 or 15, week 1, 7 touchdowns.
Tied an NFL record.
350, 400 yards. Never played like that ever again his entire career. Peyton Manning, week 1 of the Super Bowl year. Trounced the Ravens, if I remember rightly. 7 touchdowns, 460 yards.
I remember
Never played like it before. Never played
Slightly
like
better
it
than Nick
since.
Foles, though.
And
Let's give him that.
but he had a very good career. But he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, arguably one of the best to ever play the game. And that was an outlier game. Like, that was best game of his career.
These games don't happen often, even if you're the best quarterback ever.
Often. The next quarterback I want to talk about is Patrick Mahomes. He had the 6-touchdown game, week 3. Every other week, it's been 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. You know, a 6-touchdown game is rare as hen's teeth. And you won't see him. And Mitchell Trubisky is a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback.
I think that's kind.
And great quarterbacks struggle to do 4-touchdown games regularly. Aaron Rodgers, the best quarterback to ever play the game, arguably, struggles to do 3-touchdown games consistently.
Yeah.
Drew Brees, one of the best to ever play the game, struggles to do 4-touchdown games consistently. Phillip Rivers, fantastic quarterback, struggles to do multiple touchdown games consistently. Tom Brady. These are top tier elite level quarterbacks, and they struggle to consistently put up the game that you need to have from Mitch Trubisky to make Taylor Gabriel worth a trade for Julio Jones. And this offense thus far has seemed to have struggled, and it got it together against the worst defense in the league.
And
so,
who does Julio Jones play this week?
Big question mark.
The Buccaneers. Just a go on.
If I was to make a prediction for Julio Jones this week, I look to him to have a monster game. He's probably going to have
150 at least.
30 yards, 150 yards. Look to him to score a touchdown this week as well, I think. It will be on a broken coverage, 55-yard bomb down the field. He'll catch it 30 yards deep, and then he'll run it in the next 20 yards.
Just to really labour this point, because this is big news, and this is probably the biggest news we'll have all season in our league. Julio Jones was the 4th highest scoring wide receiver in fantasy football last year. So that is a wide receiver 1. Yes, there were people that were disappointed he wasn't better, because the season before he was absolutely brilliant. But the 4th highest scoring wide receiver was a disappointing year. That says everything you need to know about the workload and the talent that Julio Jones sees. So Taylor Gabriel is 5'8" and 165 pounds. Not the typical build of someone that you would say would be expected to be a particular red zone threat. Normally you look to someone bigger or bulkier, and they're the guys that really you often see catching touchdowns. And the last thing I want to look at is targets. Taylor Gabriel's target counts this season: 5 week 1, 7 week 2, 10 week 3 against the Cardinals, and then 7 targets, 7 receptions against the Bucks. Meanwhile, Julio Jones, 19 targets, 9 targets, only 6 against the Saints, and that was probably a disappointing week. 12 targets, 9 targets. So we're looking at really like 25% more targets on average. That makes a huge difference. Absolutely massive. I don't know.
So a final point for me. I can't remember if it was. I think it was going to be injury in 2013 that cut his year short. I can't remember what it was exactly, but since 2013, he is averaging about 1,550 yards a year, but that's kind of skewed by the 1800 season, and about 5.5 touchdowns approximately a year. 1,500 yards. That's like upwards of 30% of an offense.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about what quarterbacks throw these days, when you talk about, I mean, I know the average is about 4,000 yards, but I'm pretty sure Matt Ryan's yardage totals over that span, he's doing like just under 4,000 yards a season. So half of Matt Ryan's yardage total comes from Julio Jones. That's 50% of the passing offense potentially being on Julio Jones's back.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I mean, like I said, the only trade I think would have made sense to anyone else would have been an AJ Green for Julio Jones trade. AJ Green doesn't necessarily get the yards, but he gets the touchdowns, whereas Julio Jones gets the yards but not the touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be looking for the main piece on a high-powered offense with a favourable schedule, really, because I think those are what Julio Jones has. All those things.
Yeah. So I think players that I would consider trading Julio Jones for: Antonio Brown,
or a package deal.
AJ Green,
perhaps sway me.
Yeah, I'm just because it was a 1-for-1, so I'm kind of going 1-for-1. I would struggle and hesitate to go any top running backs for a top wide receiver, because running backs inherently score more points because they do the running game, but they also catch passes and they're more likely to score touchdowns. So you would never consider a Todd Gurley, David Johnson.
I think running back is way more volatile.
No,
I think the difference between, and this is perhaps an argument for Adam, the difference between the top wide receivers and perhaps like the tier 2 or 3, I think is a lot closer than it is with running backs.
Oh, running backs fall off a cliff, but when you're talking about the top,
so you don't think Gurley's ridiculous point totals would be super attractive?
Yeah, but if I had Todd Gurley and someone offered me Julio Jones, I'd laugh.
Yeah, there's no way I'd accept that. But this.
Yeah.
I mean.
But that's my argument. Like, this is a kind of trade where, like, it feels like Adam was shopping Julio, not Reese.
Yeah. So I'm thinking
to pick up Julio.
Maybe if I was in Adam's position and I wanted rid of Julio, maybe if I was offering for a Todd Gurley, I would feel like that would be probably closer in value to Tyler Boyd.
I don't think you. I don't.
No, neither do I. But I didn't think this deal would ever get made.
Very true. But your argument here is that running backs aren't as valuable.
No, it's not. I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
I value running back more highly than wide receiver.
Yeah, that's my point. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying running backs, you would never try and trade Julio Jones for a first round running back, because the first round.
Yeah,
running
I would
back
try. I would be ecstatic if it was accepted. Yeah. That's for sure, and that's evident in the way my team is built.
I mean, the premise of you currently having Julio Jones and then trying to trade him seems preposterous, because you've been begging 80% of the league for their top wide receivers since you opened trading season on the league.
I mean, but you look at the way my team is built with Melvin Gordon, Marshawn Lynch, Jordan Howard, and Mark Ingram.
I'm not saying it was wrong of you to do it. I'm just saying that if you had your hands on Julio Jones, you would be cackling in the corner wearing a top hat.
I think if I had my hands on Julio Jones, I'd somehow manage to be upset by it. And I'd probably feel more in tune with Adam, because I've got Odell Beckham Jr. and somehow he's now cursed by Eli Manning when he's on my team. So who knows?
Do you feel like you have a quarterback problem? I don't know.
I feel like Old Yeller needs to take a visit to New York.
Are you happy in New York? Hard to say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Lil Wayne was on ESPN this week saying Odell needs the ball more, and who's to argue with Lil Wayne?
I mean, I thought he was dead, so
What?
there's that.
Really?
When was the last time we heard
Like
anything
this
from
week
Lil
when his
Wayne?
album came out? Yeah.
Really? He's making
Yes.
music? That's so far out of left field. More so that, well, I don't know. It makes sense. It's all coming together. This trade, Lil Wayne dropping music for the first time in what seems like 2 decades. Who am I to argue? Perhaps it's just how the world works now.
I feel like your Lil Wayne knowledge is way off base here.
I'm not gonna lie, Dom. Right, my Lil Wayne knowledge is abysmal. In fact, I can't even name one song. All I can remember is there's a music video somewhere where he sings into a mirror, and it's decidedly awful.
I don't
from
think
my
I could name a
perspective.
single Lil Wayne song. But I know he's had... I think his last album came out about 5 years ago.
No, it's got to be longer than that, surely. I feel like we've gone massively off topic. I mean, I don't have anything else to say. I feel like I've utilised every fleck of football knowledge I can to dissect this strange dilemma we've been met with this afternoon. And I feel like we've taken a bowling ball and thrown it down the alleyway, and Adam is every single one of those pins we've just taken out.
Nothing would make me happier than Taylor Gabriel going on to outscore Julio Jones this season. I would absolutely love it. I would so love to be wrong, because who doesn't love chaos in their life? But I honestly cannot say that I think it's going to happen.
And I agree with you. Are you
I'm
happy
happy to wrap it up,
there?
and
Are
we will have to wait and see.
Fantastic.
Maybe we'll have Taylor Gabriel
Stay tuned.
watch as an ongoing segment going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, coming soon, the Was It Worth It
that's
podcast. Where we talk about how Lil Wayne's new album aged and the trade of the century, how that
great
aged.
stuff.
Wonderful. Well, pleasure to be on, Dom. I think this is going to be the longest podcast we've done
Certainly getting there.
so far. But well worth it, I feel. I'll see you.
Yeah, thank you
week, I
very
suppose.
much. Good luck to everybody in their games, unless you're playing me. Thank you, and goodbye.
Absolutely. See you next week.